Good morning and welcome back again this week to number 8 in our series of Literacy Unlocked. Today's webinar is going to be about phonics, so builds upon what we've done so far. So at the moment, to date, we have looked at things that help children to learn, which are, no doubt remember them now, build upon prior learning, make sure they are relevant to the children that you're teaching, and make sure that they're motivational and fun. We don't want drill and boring things. And we've looked at our diagram of indicators of good literacy. So these are all research-based, and they're what researchers have found that children who are good at literacy possess. So these are what we want children to have. Now, so far, we've looked at cognitive skills, visual skills, listening, speaking, phonological awareness here, which has been said to be the most important skill that children bring to learning to read and write. Obviously, as well, they have to have bibliographic knowledge. So even if they had phonological awareness, but they didn't know which way up to put a book, then they would struggle. So we need phonological awareness and awareness of syllables, rhymes and phonemes. Phonemes being the most important because they are the smallest unit of sounds in words. And in order to learn to read and write, we have to be able to map those to symbols. The symbols that we use are our alphabetic characters, which is what we're going to look at here today. So ultimately, children need the ability to map language sounds to the syllables, our alphabet. This is what we're looking at for reading and writing. We've looked at the question, how do children learn to read? And they bring all these skills to reading. So ideally, we want the children to have these skills before we start with phonics. How do we teach children to read? Formally, we tend to start here with phonics. So this week, by the end of this session, I would like you to be able to define phonics, tell somebody else what it is, talk about how children learn to read and how they're taught to read, why our language is not phonetic, the origins of the English language, where do all our words come from, explain balanced literacy and structured literacy. Why are people talking about these? Why are they different? How are they different? And of course, activities to help children to learn phonics. So what is phonics? So very simply, phonics is the ability, it's a way of showing children how to match sounds to symbols. So there are 44 sounds, or phonemes, but only 26 letters of the alphabet, and somehow or other children have to learn to match those together. So the process of that is called phonics. As children's ability to match sounds to symbols progresses from single syllables, so we start with letters. So we might say v for van, and then we want to match these sounds to the letters that we write. So we might start with v, van, and then we proceed to v, a, n, van. So the little Elkonin boxes that we used last week are the forerunner. If we know the sounds, then we can start to write in the symbols that match. So v, a, n, van. We've got examples here. A, t, obviously our usual example. And children need to understand the concept of beginning, middle and end, and listen for the sounds in the words in these different places. So for example, the word cow. A child might actually hear the sound w much stronger than the sound k. But they have to be able to work out k is what you're asking for at the beginning, o is what you're asking for in the middle, and w at the end. Now there's a program called Jolly Phonics. I'm sure you've heard of Jolly Phonics. It has actions as well and little songs to go with it. And they recommend an order for teaching the letters, which is a really good idea. Because if you just start with A, B, C, they don't go together and make any words. So they recommend that you start with S-A-T-P-I-N. Start with these 6 letters. So you've got 2 vowels and lots of letters to play with. So you might have them on cards, or I prefer this. These are little wooden letters so the children can feel the shapes of the letters. And then you ask children to make words. Most of the words have the vowels, point out the vowels, the I or the A sound in the middle, but not all words. You can start with the A. You can have ant, asp. Asp might not be one of the first words in a young child's vocabulary. So we can see we can have sat, sat, pin, nip, etc. So one of the first things that teachers do when they're starting to teach children to read is we learn letter sounds, and then we learn to blend them together to make words. And then we try to read words by looking at the word and then working out what the sounds are and segmenting those sounds. Oh, that must say pin. Okay, so this is what teachers do. This is how we start teaching children to learn to read and write if they want to write them down. Obviously, not every letter maps exactly to a sound. Even children's names. So if you had the name Sam, of course, is very nice. That makes life very easy. What about Ewan? Starts with an E. So that's not quite so easy to explain. However, we have to try. So this is how we start teaching children to read. So phonics is a way of teaching children to read by matching the sounds to the corresponding alphabetic symbols. Now there are 2 types of phonics. There's synthetic phonics, which I've just explained, which is where you blend sounds together, match the letters, blend them together to make a word, and then to read a word, you look at those letters, identify the letter sounds, put those sounds together to make the word. So you segment and blend sounds together. That is synthetic phonics. There's also analytic phonics, where you teach a child to read a word and then break it down into its component parts. So this study that we've mentioned before, the Clackmannanshire study, it was 7 years, and the 2 ladies looked at which was the best way, synthetic phonics or analytic phonics, and it was decided that synthetic phonics is the best way to teach children to read and do it in an order, systematically. So systematic synthetic phonics has been found to be the most effective way of teaching children to become literate. Learning builds gradually, so you build up the sound to symbol relationships bit by bit as you go along. So matching sounds to symbols. After children can add and delete phonemes, remember the phonemes are the sounds. So for example, you might have a, t, at, and then you can add t, at, tat, k, a, t, cat, p, a, t, pat. That is adding phonemes. Or if you have the word pat, then you take away the p. Okay, that's deleting. Then you have the word at. Children have to be able to play with these sounds. Now, vowels can go together, like you can have 2 E's, or you can have EA, or you can have AU. But then it can also be split. You can have split vowels. So for example, here we've got pin, and if you have the I and the E together, the E goes at the end, and then you get the word pine. So the E on the end, sometimes, I know when I was at school, it's called magic E. Some people don't call it magic E anymore, but magic E works quite well because it changes the I sound to I, or the A sound to A. or the E sound to E. So it changes the vowel sound to the same sound as the name. So we've got pin, pine, or pan, pain, run, rune, rot, wrote. So these are things that need to be taught to children separately. I mean, there's lots and lots more to teaching just matching sounds to symbols, because obviously they don't match exactly. Some words are not phonetic, for example, said. We'll look at maybe why that's not phonetic in a minute. So what teachers do is they teach children to read from flashcards. So they show the word, this is what the word says, and then what does this word say? So you learn by recognition of what the word looks like. A little bit here again about syllables. So if children are learning to write their own words, they need to be able to break them down into syllables so that they can make smaller chunks, and then they're easier to sound out and write their corresponding letters. Now, sight words, people call different things sight words. So a sight word is something, a word that you can read just by looking at it. You don't have to start decoding it, breaking it down, looking at the different sounds. So ultimately, we read all words by sight. So as adults now, I can read and you can read what's on the PowerPoint without having to decipher each word. So all these words eventually become sight words. Some people call sight words words that are irregular. So you have to learn them by sight, because otherwise you can't work out phonetically how they don't match how they sound. So some people call those sight words. Another set of sight words is words that we want children to read on sight because they are very common words and we see them a lot, like the, and is can be spelled out phonetically, but we see it a lot. So we want children just to be able to recognise and fluently read and without having to go and every time they see it. So some words become sight words because they occur frequently. We've got and, in, of, the, said, your, because, what, should, some. So these are sight words. It's important that children learn that many words are not phonetic, so you can't write every word phonetically. Ideally, you need to have seen a word to know what it looks like and how to spell it. Otherwise, you're going to get lots of spellings wrong. So we need to learn about patterns and roots, where words come from. So children who are good at matching sound patterns, oh, here I'm on about rhyme again, e.g. rhymes are most likely to be good at spelling because they can match those sound patterns to written patterns. For examples, ite, sight, flight, hair, air, flare, bear, glare, saw, paw, bear, pear. Now, please don't teach sounds together that don't look the same. So hair and bear, although they rhyme, don't teach homophones as words that sound the same. Don't teach them together because they're different spelling patterns. So in order not to confuse children and to learn about pattern, you would do hair, air, flare together and bear, pear together. Don't mix the two. We've got examples here of some words, more words that are not phonetic. One starts with w, but we can have one as in a one erase as well. Field, it's got IE, the IE making an E sound. Both, like both. Bro or gehörte, you have to learn the spelling. Brought, enough, again, it's the same spelling pattern but different sound. Great, work, walk, laugh. So it's quite difficult to match every word with a sound if we only use phonics. So when a lot of people ask, when should we start teaching it? What age? Is there an age? Well, not really. The answer is when a child is ready. So Wise and Styles have done research, and they've looked at children learning phonics, and they suggest age 6 to 7. Now this agrees with Sue Palmer's, I mentioned her, she wrote in her book Upstart. Remember, if you don't have a copy, please get a copy of that book, it's an excellent book. Upstart Scotland is a campaign for children to start formal literacy learning later. So instead of learning at 4 or 5, 6 or 7, because it doesn't suit all children. Not all children are ready. However, what if children are ready at 4 and can read? That's okay, let them carry on. So in the UK, children can start school at 4. My birthday is in July, so I started school age 4. For some children, this is far too early and they're not ready to start phonics. In Scotland, children can start, you can choose 4.5 or 5.5. Some parents choose to send their child at 5.5 because they think they benefit from an extra year in a kindergarten setting or in a nursery setting, or even at home. So the question of when should children start, there's not a definitive age. It's more of a stage when they're ready, when they have all these other skills on the diagram that they are ready to bring and ready to learn about matching sounds to symbols. If the children can't identify sounds, how can they match them to symbols? It's not possible. So this article in the Times Ed was in January this year, and this was their quote: "There is nothing wrong with teaching phonics," because we've said don't teach phonics before reception. Nothing wrong with teaching phonics when it's stage appropriate. Stage, not age. She said, she is Dr. Sue Ellingham, an early years consultant. "If children are not yet secure with speaking and responding and the listening skills needed to hear words and tune in, then learning phonemes and digraphs," I think that should say graphemes, not digraphs. A digraph is just 2 letters together. Got myself now. Phonemes and graphemes. A grapheme is a written form of a phoneme. So if children, if they're trying to teach them phonemes and graphemes, then that literally falls on deaf ears because children haven't got the sounds. So emotional well-being and language must be in place first. Reading is not the same as phonics. Phonics is about decoding. So can you write a phoneme? A phoneme, remember, is a sound. Can you write a sound? No, you can't write a sound. When you write a sound, it becomes a grapheme. So a grapheme is a written symbol, okay? Digraph is 2 together. So we've got reception in UK here, age 4 to 5. Children can be very young when they start school. In Scotland, it's a little bit later. In other countries in Europe, children start between 6 and 7, which we're looking at to say, is that a better age to start? And Wise and Styles say, if we're going to start teaching phonics, then yes, that is a better age. It's a bit later, gives children more time to understand about sounds in words. This was also in the Times Ed at the beginning of this year, and it's a little of an inflammatory statement here. Little or no evidence that phonics improves reading. Well, we know that phonics is the best way to start teaching children to read. So this is rather unwarranted, but still I'm demonstrating to you that there are people saying, no, it's not the best thing. But research says that it is. So why would someone suggest that phonics doesn't work? I learned to read in the 1960s, and phonics was the in thing then. Then they decided, oh, phonics doesn't work because a lot of our language is not phonetic, and children are getting confused with the words that are not phonetic, so it doesn't work. So a child might write the word walked with a t on the end because it says walked, so they'll put t, and this is not correct. So this is not the best way. So then they went through, we'll teach children to read by sight words, And of course that doesn't work because you can't learn every word by sight. So we went through lots of methods. We went through whole language approach, which is people that think that language, written language even, is natural. It's not a natural process because you have to learn to match the sounds to the symbols. It's just they don't all match one to one, but you still have to learn to match them. So, you know, there are other ideas on how children need to learn to read, how children learn to read and how they're taught to read. So I'm suggesting to you that you work it out for yourself and look at the children in front of you and look at them and say, what do they need? What are they already bringing? What do they not have that I can help them with, which will help them to learn to read, rather than just jump in and go, that's it, we're doing phonics. But if children are not ready, and some children, they can't get the sounds in words. It's very difficult for them. So to look at what can you do to help. So let's have a look at these words. This is an argument against phonics. So read these words. We've got trough, same spelling pattern, O-U-G-H, trough, tough, bow, bore, t. So we've got off, the O-U-G-H is off. Is it uff? Is it ow? Is it or? Oh, okay, so we'll do or for bought, but what about fraught? Changes to an A. So these are some of the problems that we have with our language. I'm going to let you go and have a go at reading this word. George Bernard Shaw, a famous playwright, suggested a spelling. This is a creature's name. See if you can work it out. So he spelt it like this, G-H-O-T-I. It's phonetic. So the GH is as in tough, the O as in women, and the TI as in nation. I'll go and let you have a go. Back in a minute. Okay, did you work it out? It says fish. So GH could be as in tough, f, I. So we've got f, I as in women, and sh as in nation. So he argued this word could say fish. So it just shows how difficult our language is. It doesn't have one-to-one correspondence. It relies on spelling patterns. There are also silent letters which don't help. Number, pneumatic with a P, fry end, host with a silent H, canoe, silent K for new, again silent H in white, guest, silent U, gnome, a silent G. So these are things that children have to learn. Oh, sorry, did you hear that? I've got a feeling the sound was off there. Silent letters, number, pneumatic, starts with P, fry end, G, host, K, new, W, height, Gu, est. So these silent letters, gnome starts with a G. So these are things that children need to learn. The English language has many origins. It comes from lots of different countries. We've been invaded lots over the years. So we have words from, we have a lot of Greek and Latin words actually. Most of them are probably from Greek and Latin. So we have a lot of Greek words, atlas, chaos. So we say K, but it starts with ch. Herculean, psycho, starts with a P. Techno, photo, the PH is f, graph. And of course you know logo and phono. From Arabic, we have pants, sofa, orange, coffee, lemon, mattress, sugar. From Chinese, we have typhoon, kumquat, ketchup, kowtow, gung ho. from West Africa. You can see why, can't you? These things come from these countries. We have banana, aardvark, banjo, safari. From Italian, we have music and food words. So from music, we have tempo, mean time, soprano, piano, forte, and foods, broccoli, pasta, pizza, and scampi. From German, you can probably work out what these words mean. Some people quite like learning German because it's quite similar to English. So we've got Brot, Vater, Mutter, Sohn. So brother, father, mother, son, meine Tochter, my daughter. They sound quite similar. Wasser, water, Milch, milk. House, house. Wolf, wolf. Schwimmen, swim. Trinken, drink. Sitzen, sit. You can see how very similar these words are. So even if you don't know German, can you understand this little sentence? Mein Auto ist kaputt. Yes, we would understand it. My car is broken. Mein, same, mine. Auto, we know auto is a car. Ist, is, very close. And kaputt, we use as a slang word for broken. So there are lots of links with these languages. Scandinavian, we have cozy, hug, nudge, wicker, and from Norwegian, we have the word ski. Not going to be an English word, is it? We don't ski in England. From Vikings, we have window, husband, happy, scales, bowl. And Thursday, from Thor's Day, the god of war. From Latin, we have nautical, school, antique, village. Village is an interesting one because we have the word villa for house. Look at how many words we have that we know they mean house. So we have house in German. We have villa. We know villa is a house. What about cave? We have house wine, carver. Carver means house. Carver, casa. Very close in sound. Casa means house. Casino is a house. So, villa, obviously, from a lot of houses together, village. Copious comes from cup, cup running over. Copious, a full cup. Multiple, many. Aquarium, to do with water. Amicable, mon ami in French is my friend, friendly. And casino from house. From French, we have like il fait beau, it's beautiful, beautiful day today. Beau, beautiful. Filly, mon fille, so a girl. Café, we know café is café. We've taken the French word. So our language is quite complex because it comes from lots of different places. So let's have a look at the morphology of some words. How are words put together? So this is roots. Where do they come from? Prefixes, suffixes, beginning bits, end bits. So you can find this. This is from a little chart on the internet. If you look it up, you can see it goes A to Z. I've just put a couple down for examples. So ambi means both, ambidextrous, ambivalent, ambiguous. Aud, audio, means sound, audience, audition, auditory. Bene means good, benefactor, benevolent. So these words, although we don't use bene for good, which you would if you were Italian, they're within our language, so we do use them somewhere. Cent, we don't say cent for 100, we say 100. However, when we have century or per cent, they refer to 100. In Greek, we've got auto, meaning self, autonomous, autobiography, bio, meaning life, biology, biography, biology, study of life. Biography is a story of your life. We've got graphy in there again. Graph means writing, biography, written life. Graph, writing, graphic, grapheme, a written form of sound, which is the phoneme. So learning about language helps us with spelling. It's not what you do when you're 5 though. It comes a little later when the words get more complex. So we do look at word families. We're back to rhymes again. So you put words together, sam, ham, ram. They all are the family of am. At family, pat, sat, rat, fat. Ite, flight, sight, fight. Ain, rain, pain, train. So children learn about word families at school as well. These are very important. Remember, these are rhyming patterns. You can see now the importance of rhyme to reading. So the writing of English language, although it appears to be quite irregular, it's not quite as irregular as we might think. So take the word said, if we spell it phonetically. Maybe it came from said, because we put ed on to make past tense. He said something. Said, if you spelt it S-A-I-D, which possibly we said said in the past, is the same spelling as made and paid. Made, paid, said. All that's happened is we've changed the pronunciation to said. If you come from Yorkshire, might be the same with I made a cake. I made something, because we don't pronounce it made. It's slang really, but I made a mistake instead of I made a mistake. So these variations in pronunciation lead to variations in spelling. What about the word go? If we put that in the past, why don't we say goed? Some children sometimes say goed because they've learnt that the ed sounds goes on the end, meaning past. Well, how does it become went? Doesn't seem related at all. But if you look at the word wend, to wend your way, wend means to go. Maybe it means to go a little slower. Wend, went. Old English, we had the word wenden, meaning the verb to go. So it's not quite as irregular as it would first appear. So again, I'm mentioning phonological awareness. You can see now how important this is to phonics and the ability to match the sounds to symbols. So rhymes help children to make analogies. It means to match between the patterns, the written patterns, and the sound patterns. We've got walk, talk. These are matching patterns. Brought, sought, fought. And syllables help children to put words in smaller chunks, as we've mentioned, but they also help with the doubling of consonants like hip, po, potamus, al, li, gator. So if you ask a child to syllabify bottle, we don't want bot-ul, because we know there are 2 T's. So we try to get them to say bot-tul. And if that is in their mind, like me with fry end, then they'll remember bot-tul, 2 T's. You say bot, and then you say tul. And silent letters, Wednesday, chocolate. So what children need to do is need to say the spelling sounds in their head. You're converting sounds to written patterns back to sounds. It's a 2-way process. So how are children taught to read? Well, phonics is definitely the best way forward, and it's certainly the best start you can give a child. There was after the 60s and the 70s, look at whole word or look say. So you show a child a flashcard and they learn to read the word. And the idea behind that is that not all words follow a regular spelling pattern, like right, enough, sign, or have consistently sound symbol correspondence. So consider the letters EA. In this word, they say E, meat. In this word, they say A, great. In this word, they say threat. And in this word, they say bear. So it's quite complicated. And of course, we had Frank Smith saying you read by reading. It's a natural process. It's not a natural process, but you do learn to read better by reading more. So let's have a quick look at balanced literacy and structured literacy. We'll look at structured literacy first. Structured literacy is they are in favour of people who are in favour of structured literacy of phonics. Phonics is in this structured literacy camp. It's also in balanced literacy. Explicit systematic teaching that focuses on phonological awareness. We still have those sounds. We know that that is important. Word recognition, so maybe sight. Phonics, decoding, spelling and syntax at the sentence and paragraph levels. We want children to be able to decode these words and to say what they are. We don't want them to guess. We don't want them to guess by context or, oh, guess from the picture. We want them to be able to decode every word that they see so that they can say the word. So use decodable books. Yes, absolutely. So you can't argue with this. However, children bring more to it. There's more to it than just decoding. Decoding is what we call barking at print. You just say what you see. I've got the word sight here because you remember we had these little Alconian boxes. If we want a child to spell sight, S-I-T, 3 sounds. How do you write that? We know the word I is E-Y-E, S-I-T, S-I-T-E, S-I-G-H-T. It's not straightforward. So balanced literacy is between whole language and phonics. This is somewhere in between. My own view is in between these two here. So use word analogies, pictures and context. This is what people in favour of balanced literacy say. Use what you can. Focus on shared reading, that's reading together, guided reading, reading with a child, and independent reading, reading on their own. Exposure to high quality literature for understanding, so teaching children about language, increasing prosody, how they pronounce things, fluency. Systematically introducing letters to correspond with language sounds. Yes, that's phonics. So there's nobody that says phonics is not a good idea, not these days. Douglas Fisher and Nancy Frey, they have written all about balanced literacy. They've written quite a lot of books on literacy. And they say it's a balance between, and they identify 5 things here. Literature and informational text. I say in balanced literacy, look at lots of different things, bring 2 sides together. So we're learning to read books and stories, and we're learning to read environmental print. Direct instruction, so telling children this is how it is, and dialogic, having conversations with children about books. Reading and writing, it's a balance between reading and writing. Input, output, reading and listening, speaking and writing, and whole group instruction and small group instruction. They're saying learning to read and write is a balance between bringing all these things together. So they also are proposing, so the teacher says this is what I do, then scaffolds it, do it together, and then the child learns to do it on their own. So this all seems sensible, and this all seems sensible. So I'm in both these camps. So what can you do? Now then, in the email that I sent, there was an email to a link to a video by Ruth Miskin. She has written some lovely little decodable books. They're excellent if you get copies of those. And they take children systematically through phonics, building up words, and they're little storybooks that children can easily read. Another system you might have heard of is Toe by Toe. This lady, Kida Cowling, she's from the village where I was brought up, and I went to see her a few years ago. She's a lovely lady. And she left school, at age 14. She had to go work in a mill, and she eventually became a teacher. And she's looking at these children who were struggling and going, what can I do to help? So really she invented this system for children who were dyslexic, but it helps any children who are struggling. And again, it goes through systematically teaching children sound by sound, pattern by pattern. The little book's called Toe by Toe, and it's intended to be used one-to-one. She's used it in prison with adults. So she said this can help anyone who's struggling with learning to read and write. You go through the process very gradually. It's a one-to-one system. Sadly, I found this morning, this lady passed away in January this year. She was 94, but quite an amazing lady. So what else can we do? So these are systematic ways of helping children to read. Teach letter names and sounds together. Don't teach them separately. We don't want children just to read CAT and try somehow to make that into the word cat. You can't do it. Ensure children have phonological awareness. We've mentioned this. Start with single syllabic words like bat, pin, sat. Use flashcards to help children. So we might have flashcards here. Sh, beach, beach. Sh, sh, fish. So help children to sound out sounds within words. Sat pin is an excellent place to start. Children making their own words and writing them. Manipulative games, we talked about, this is for writing. Remember, we've talked about this, that children need to be able to manipulate their fingers, and their muscles need to be able to hold a pencil. So you can buy these little grips. They're called tripod grips. So remember, we said children first of all have a palmar grip, and then maybe a pincer grip, like you would have if you had a pair of tweezers. But we want children to have a tripod grip. So this is a little triangle. Look, so it's got 3 sides, 1 finger on that, thumb on that, and your 3rd finger on the 3rd side. So it helps children to hold the pencil correctly if they're struggling. Encourage your child to read decodable books. So once they can start to decode the symbols that they see into sounds and make the words, then they're ready to start on these little decodable books. Decodable books means the ones that are just simple, but little simple single syllable words. Continue, of course, to play with sounds in words, rhymes, chants, songs. The alphabet song. So the alphabet song, did you watch the link to that? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Be very careful with LMNOP. LMNOP sounds like it could be one word altogether, so you have to enunciate LMNOP, and ideally point to the letters as you go, so you can help children. There is a book called LMNOP, if you're interested. It's a very excellent story. I think the title of the book is spelled E-L-L-A, minnow, like fish, and P, P-E-A. LMNOP. Very interesting book if you come across it anywhere. So what about a catch game? So if you've got a group of children, you can give them trying to find that. So a sound, put it on the front of attach the sound to the front of their t-shirts, stand in a circle, and then give children maybe a word. So you might say saucepan, horse, and ask them, which sound is this? Can you see the spelling pattern? Another idea. There's lots and lots of games and ideas for phonics on the internet. I'm sure you won't be short of finding any. Read to and with your children and ensure it's pleasurable. So what other things can you do? Well, do you remember we mentioned the Florida Reading Research Center? Florida Center for Reading Research, FCRR. So they have lots of things that you can print off. We've got these again, little cards. So what is the initial sound? The child puts the initial sound in. N, rug, ug, t, n. Okay. And then same words we have on this sheet. So the children have now learnt the other sounds in the words and write them. We have this one. It's on set and rhyme, so you get all the, you just print them out and laminate them, match them to the pictures on cards, so matching sounds to pictures. This is another one which is very nice. Again, this is the reading centre again. Sham. If they done sham, what might go on the end of it? Poo. Ooh, let's have a look for that. Shampoo. We've got window, etc. Goes sandwich. What about pen? We can have pen at the beginning and pen at the end. So we could have O pen or pen still, and so forth, so on and so forth, and then write them down. So there are lots of those. I'm sure you can find lots of other ideas. So let's get a move on. What else have we done today? So we have defined phonics. So I hope that you now know what phonics is and you could tell someone else. Suggest how children are taught to read. So now you know what teachers do, what you might do to help children to learn to read. We do teach phonics. It's the best way to teach children to match sounds to symbols. And of course, they must have the ability to detect those sounds in words first. How do they learn to read? What do they bring to reading? You now know they bring all these other skills. The origins of the English language. This explains why our spellings seem to be so irregular at times. Explain balanced literacy and structured literacy. And lots of activities. So we've done quite a few ideas. Obviously flashcards, you can learn letters, letter sounds. Like these, you can buy cards. Apple, bed, car, like this. So there are lots of things that you can buy that will help. There are lots of things on the internet that you can print off and things like this. This is also the Florida Research Center. 8, you can slide the word along. L8. 8's not a word. D8. Plate. What words can you make? And this is a nice one as well. This is also Florida Center. So you have 2 dice. If you're going to make them, I made them with paper. It's not a good idea. Make them with cardboard. They're a bit stronger. And then you throw them and then you match however they land. Go aim. See what words you can make. At. Aim. Go. So say up, yeah, that way up. Go up, gap, at, etc. Okay, that's quite a nice thing. So children can do these as little centres on their own on a table, throw the dice, see what words they can make. We've got ank, got the ank. See how many words they can make. So it's good practice reading and writing. Oops. So that's what we've done today. And next week, we're going to look at the road to literacy. So all the skills that we've mentioned so far and the experience and the knowledge that children bring to literacy, is there an order? Do we do it at an age, at a stage? Do we match? How do we match these things together? This is what we're going to look at next week. So I look forward to being with you again next week. I wish you a lovely weekend and a very good week next week. I know a lot of you are now on holiday. Hooray! Not that lots of people can go very far at the moment, but I wish you a very good weekend and a lovely week, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye for now.